Hello to anyone watching. This is going to be a PSA discussing the origins and history of hostile architecture to accompany my final research paper. For those that don't know, hostile architecture is defined as the use of built elements in an environment to restrict behavior. This behavior that the definition is talking about is referring to specific groups being there, such as the homeless and skaters. The issue with hostile architecture is that it doesn't confront the underlying problem at hand, that these groups have nowhere to go, and simply perpetuates this problem further. But how did this practice begin, you might ask? Well, to know that, we have to go back to the 20th century and to an architect named Robert Moses. Throughout his career, he designed hundreds of parkways and public spaces throughout New York. However, the issue was that he was very racist. He used things like low clearances on parkways that were too low for buses to travel under in order to make his parks inaccessible to Black and underprivileged families. This was the origin of the idea of hostile architecture, of keeping people that you don't want away from places that you don't want them to be in. The next main origin of hostile architecture was CPDED, or Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. While it started out as just a theory, once proven to work, an entire committee was made around it, comprising of policymakers, architects, planners, and police inspectors. They held conferences to discuss new methods of CPDED and eventually came up with their so-called first generation CPDED. This consisted of all of the hostile architecture we know today. That includes the armrests, spikes, bumps, rocks, and everything else. While originally meant to stop crime, they were instead used to displace cities' undesirable groups. The CPDED, recognizing this, admitted that the first-generation CPDED had major problems and developed second-generation CPDED, which identified a need for a network that provides services to the homeless. However, this second plan costs more money, and cities view the first-generation CPDED, also known as hostile architecture, as more than enough, so this second generation sadly was never put in use. As of today, hostile architecture has sadly only gotten more and more prominent. Cities refuse to allocate more money to homeless shelters or to skate parks, and insist on using hostile architecture to continue to displace these groups, with no regard for how that impacts them at all. My proposal is for cities to allocate more funds to DHS and to helping solve the homelessness crisis instead of using hostile architecture to push them around, and to shed more light on homelessness awareness and how hard it is to go through what they do. Hopefully, this will eventually end the hostile architecture crisis and start a new era of hope for the homeless. If you want my full perspective on the issue, you should read my paper that I wrote about it. Otherwise, thank you for watching.